Council meeting of February 10th, 2025. We do the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Dane, a roll call, please.
Trustee Salaka. Here. Trustee Sully.
Here.
Trustee Hanson. Here. President Goldberg.
Here.
Trustee Mears.
Here.
Trustee Gates is on Zoom. Virtual.
That's everyone? All right, so next up is adoption of the agenda. Before I move on, I'm gonna go ahead and make one proposed change. We got a couple applicants here that are wait on at the end of the meeting, and we've got some fairly lengthy and boring village administrative stuff to take care of. So we're gonna move new business items 11, C, and D up to at the F, and make it just before audit presentation. We'll add in a 5.1 and add items C and D at that point so we can let our guests and residents get out of here. Next items are, so adoption of the agenda. So with the exception of the change that I made, does anybody else have any comments on the agenda? All right. Having heard none, can I get a motion to approve the agenda as amended?
So moved.
We got a first from Pam, second by Michael. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. So, we have 3 different minutes. All right, so we're just going in order. The first 2 are from our special meetings of December 11th and December 12th. And then the last is our January 13th. So let's start with the meeting of December 11th. Anybody have any comments?
Motion to approve.
Can I ask, who writes these minutes? Because like, I'm
Dana.
not even listed as present. And Mike, were you here this day, the 11th?
Mike was here.
Yeah.
You're here?
Mike was here, but yeah,
minutes, where am I?
that's weird. You're completely, yeah, that's a good
Oh,
point. That's
you were
just a
left off of
typographical.
his- Okay.
I think we missed Angelina on
yeah,
the
okay.
11th. Let's make sure. Hey, you're here on the vote. She's got you on the vote, so that was just a typo.
Okay.
And you know what? The same thing it looks like on the 12th was, even though we're not there, but that's the same,
It
so,
was probably a cut and paste.
yeah, for sure. Okay.
And then I have one update on the last motion for the move by Salaka, second by Gates, to appoint Chris King to the village council trustee. On the roll call vote, I was a nay.
Okay, very good. All right, well, we have a motion that's unseconded to approve the minutes, but now, so Mike, you want to amend your motion to approve the minutes of December 11th as modified?
I amend my motion to approve the minutes as modified.
Second?
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, next is the 12th, same comment and roll call.
Motion to approve.
And then, I guess, real quick, a couple of updates.
Okay?
Same feedback that I provided last time and we had discussion around, under the public comments. There was the mention of a specific name. We had talked about amending that to say an applicant for village council. And similarly, below that, I would modify the language to say something to the nature of Goldberg requested that comments about applicants to be considered for council be held until that portion of the agenda.
You just lost me on that last sentence.
Yeah, so right now it says Goldberg clarified that the meeting was not for regular public comments, but for addressing candidates.
Yeah.
But what David Goldberg was saying, or sorry, President Goldberg was saying, was that if you have comments specifically about something on the
I see.
agenda,
Yeah, that's-
wait until that portion.
Got it.
I want to make
Okay.
clear that we were still welcoming public comment during this
Okay.
meeting, just it'd be for the appropriate portion.
Thank you for that.
Yep.
Motion to approve is amended.
Second.
Further discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, and then lastly is our regular meeting of January 13th.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Discussion? I didn't have any of this. We're good, we're getting them nice and condensed. All right, having no further discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? All right, very good. All right, next, let's start with what was item C, consideration of the site plan approval for 32750 and 32760 Franklin Road. If there's anyone here from the applicant? For those, this is yeah, please come up. We're all excited to have the Franklin opening soon, so
Yeah, I'm here. I know you, some of you have met with Mike Yeager before. He's my partner. So I'm just here representing Skillform because he's out of town at the
yeah,
moment. So
so we don't have Peter here. Meg, you want to give everyone a quick synopsis on why the applicant's here and what we're doing?
Absolutely. So previously, this council would have gone ahead and approved the site plan for interior renovations happening over at the Franklin. There were a couple of exterior modifications that came through as the plan progressed, and those included a gas-operated fireplace and a exterior accessory building that can be used for storage. Because those were not covered in the initial site plan, the applicant was contacted by the village. We had a meeting. They gave us an updated and amended site plan to show those changes. That then went through the HDC. It was approved by HDC. It went to planning, was approved by planning. Planning actually had held a special meeting last week in order to get this done, and it was able to make the agenda for tonight. So in front of you tonight, you have the site plan, which has been recommended by planning. It's specifically pertaining to the exterior improvements that are being made over at the Franklin.
Awesome, thank you. Pictures were great. Pictures tell a wonderful thing for us. So anybody have any questions of the applicant of what they're doing? The shed's pretty self-explanatory. So where the fireplace is going, that was an area that wasn't used that often. So that's gonna try and get some more use out of that with the fireplace, so
exactly, yeah.
that's wonderful. We got a sneak peek of what's going on inside the building, which looks wonderful as well. I mean, does anybody have any comments or questions for
I
the
ha-
applicant, please?
I had a question which I'm sure you've resolved, but
Sure.
as I recall, looking at the planning commission meeting, there was some concern about the proximity of the chimney to power lines. How did
Okay.
you end up resolving that?
I can go ahead and answer
Yeah,
that
sure.
for you. The applicant, no action was needed to resolve
okay.
that.
Yeah.
All they did was indicate where those setbacks really were. The power lines are actually on the adjacent lot. They're not even technically located on the lot where the fireplace would be. So it wasn't clear the first time we saw it in the plans, but that was clarified during the special meeting.
Got it, thank you.
Exactly, yeah. Thank you.
Anybody else? All right, so can we get a motion to approve the
Motion to
site
approve.
plan for 32750 and 32760 Franklin Road? We have a motion by Mike.
I'll
Second.
se- Go ahead.
Second.
Second by David. Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? We're good.
right.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Can't
Thank you
wait.
very much. Appreciate it.
All right, next is our annual application for Bring Your Own Dog. So come on up, ladies. What year are we on right now? Do you guys know?
Yeah, this is our 9th annual year.
That's awesome. Awesome. Please, go ahead. Tell us what you guys are doing. If you could just tell us your names and where you're from.
My name is Samantha A.R.
I'm Danielle Guda, and we're from Bloomfield Hills.
Awesome. So, this is your, application for Bring Your Own Dog. Again, when I got it initially, it was in our package, there were some missing things, but it looks to me like signatures are good. Church has signed off on the parking lot. Does anybody have any questions for the ladies? Otherwise, I'm assuming it's gonna be like it's always been, a super fun event.
Thank you.
Awesome, we look forward to it.
I make a
care.
motion to approve the permit application.
Let's get a second, and then we can do discussion, Angelina.
Second.
All right, go ahead.
Are you guys doing any social media advertising?
Yes.
Okay, if you want, just send like what you created to Meg and then we can repost it on
Oh,
our
yeah, for
newsletter.
sure.
and our-
On the newsletter and on the
social
website,
channels,
for
Main
sure.
Street.
Yep, you can
Right.
send it right to our clerk, Dana here, okay? And we'll make sure we share that for you.
Excellent, great idea.
And then, just to the staff, thanks for updating the contact information. I know that, remember before, there
Yep.
wasn't a spot for phone number or email. So you guys
Oh,
updated
excellent.
this for him, so
right.
that's really great.
Thank you. All right, so we have a motion and a second. All in favor of approving the permit for Bring Your Own Dog?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Awesome. Good luck,
Thank you
ladies.
so much.
you.
See you in May.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, fun stuff. We have our annual audit presentation from Rain Emmons, who is with PSLZ, and they are our accounting firm that does our auditing. So help us through the booklet we got.
Good evening. Nice to be here this evening and nice to see everyone. My pleasure to present to you the annual audited financial statements of the Village of Franklin for your fiscal year ended June 30th, 2024. The village did once again receive the highest level of audit opinion possible, which is an unmodified opinion. In layman's terms, clean audit opinion, no exceptions, disclaimers, nothing bad to report this evening. I'd like to start off with a few highlights, and then if anyone has any questions, or please feel free to interrupt at any time. Of course, your largest source of revenue are property taxes. The taxable values increased 6.48% this year, and that's taxable value, not anything to do with millage rates. The year before was 3.82%, so that's quite a jump. So this is really the first year that you're seeing that big assessment jump. You know, everyone has seen it, you know, the 5%, but you're at 6.48. That means people are doing improvements or new houses, or they're becoming uncapped. So you took it, you know, we were able to take advantage of some of that, so we're happy to see that. Also, in this audit, it's the first year of the additional voted operating millage. So when the voters approved to bring you back up to 3.50 in operating, so this is the first year in this audit that revenue is reflected. And that's about $310,000 additional revenue that brought in this year. State share revenue was pretty much flat. I mean, a 1.8% increase. Nothing to write home there. That, of course, is sales tax and income tax that the state collects and distributes down to the local units. There's quite a bit of activity right now at the state level. They're talking about that, so stay tuned. They had projected, you know, a few months ago when they did the projections, they were projecting 1 to 2% increase, but now they're trying to put some mechanisms in place so that the local units are not harmed as much for big drops in revenue sharing, and also they want to make sure that a lot of communities use state revenue sharing for public safety, so they want to make sure that there are things in place to keep from any big fluctuations in the state shared revenue. Also, in the general fund, ARPA revenues, American Rescue Plan Act revenues are recorded. It was $152,000 in the general fund, and that. So you received all that money a couple of years ago. They sent it all out, but then we're only recording it as we're using it. And I think this year, the fiscal year '24 is the last of it. So some of it is in the 100 and some thousands in the general fund. There's about another 100,000 in stormwater, and then there's a chunk in this pressure sewer fund as well. So you utilize that for some nice infrastructure projects, which is great. The general fund balance, so your operating expenditures in the general fund were very stable from the prior year. Really, the only thing, if you look at the totals, it looks like we're up significantly this year, but we also, in this year, we had to show the Michigan Pension Grant expenditures and also the ARPA revenues. So they're offsetting the revenues and the expenditures, and those are a couple big items. So, but if you pull those out, your operating expenditures were very close to the year before, and in your revenues as well. Ultimately, general fund balance increased 310,000. The year before, without that additional voted operating, you used up 335,000 of your fund balance the year before. So you were on path to dip into fund balance again this year if you didn't have that additional voting. So you came in budget $256,000 this year. You had projected to, on the budget side, to dip in about 10,000. And ultimately, general fund, ending fund balance is $1.2 million. That additional operating millage brings you up where you need to be. The general fund needs to stay strong because you do supplement the police department, and their, whatever their needs are, whether it's equipment, wages, staffing, additional pension contributions, that type of thing. So we like to see that the general fund is strong. And the transfer that general fund made to the police fund this year, very similar to the year before. So no big fluctuation there. It's actually about 20,000 less than the year before, but right in that $1 million range. The building permit revenues actually decreased $17,000, about 13% drop from the year before, but I think the year before you had quite a bit of activity with some new homes and additions within the community. Major capital outlay this year: Franklin Road streetscape, drainage assessment, and a new police vehicle. You paid down $840,000 in principal in debt, no new debt, yay. And you have $8.6 million left remaining on the road debt, and that ends in 2032. So that feels like it's around the corner. Net pension liability, you showed quite a bit of interest in this last year. We talked about this for a minute. Your net pension liability actually decreased this year, $376,000. Now, last year it took a big jump. So actually, the prior year increase was $900,000, and that was primarily because of net investment loss. The pension plan is valued every year as of December 31st, looking at the stock market, because that's how MERS values. So 12/31/22, the prior year audit, bad day in the stock market, so we took on paper, we didn't realize that. But we gained all that back. So we came right back up again in fiscal year '24. So that was December 31st, '23 valuation. Also in fiscal year '24, we had the Michigan Pension Grant was $479,000 that the village received that went directly into the MERS Pension Trust Plan. So that should really help you move the needle in the subsequent year. So fiscal year '25, I'm hoping to be with the good day in the stock market on December 31st that just passed, along with that extra contribution. I'm hoping to see some nice numbers there. Ultimately, you are at 54.6% funded this year. Last year, you were at 48%. It's basically, this was the climb back up. And this year, the significant things in the pension plan were you had an experience rate increase, which jumped the liability $287,000. So that is of note. So with that, that's a lot of numbers being thrown at you, but all good. Anything I can address or any questions I can answer?
Does your audit review and look at financial controls and financial processes?
Yes.
Where is that summary and analysis in here?
So we look at them, but we don't provide a report on that.
So how do we know what you found?
The
Know what the policies are and what's in place?
well, the audit doesn't provide a report on that. I look at the internal controls in order to provide an opinion on that the numbers are materially correct.
Okay, so do we have any like management assurances in here through our financial processes that there's like checks and balances and receipts and,
The
financial
absence of the absence of that letter is, tells you that things are working as they should be. You do have a nice layer of additional internal control as you have Plant Moran helping with the numbers. You know, your staff does a nice job, even though you have a small staff, you know, you do a nice job of breaking out the segregation of duties and approvals.
Can you add that to the scope?
Well, can I reframe what I'm hearing? Which is, you're saying that the measurement of controls, this is a report about numbers, and so the controls that you're looking at is not the viability of the controls as to securing like systematic
Correct.
control, right? Or like
Correct.
risk control. What you're looking at for controls is controls that the numbers are accurate.
Right, and we do a full risk assessment of, you know, where can things go wrong? You know, where are the weak points, that type of thing.
So it is
But
full-
from a number,
Yeah.
but from a numbers perspective.
But Raina does, correct me if I'm wrong, review the financial practices and policies that we have in place to ensure that proper checks and balances are being followed. And that is part of the review, it's just not part of this report.
Correct.
Can you
Didn't
add
that
it
there-
to the report so we can see what you reviewed?
That would change the scope of the service that we're being provided. That might be something that we would need to negotiate in a future audit, if that was something that you were interested in. However, that wouldn't have been discussed in the scope of services when this
Correct.
was beginning, which would have been before I was here.
Okay, yeah, that, it started in June and then it ended November,
The,
your audit timeline.
the audit started in October.
I'm talking about the contract that they would have had with that,
Oh,
would have been previously decided. I mean, we've worked with Raina for a really long time over at the village, so scope of services, if that's something council's looking for to expand on, would need to be negotiated at the time of that
Yeah,
contract.
I would just be interested in more of like a risk assessment analysis, like financial controls, management assurances, like how often and what processes we have in place to make sure that, the budget's being followed and there's checks and balances and there's, you know, proper receipts and documentation, like that kind of, analysis.
Okay, so you're looking for like a separate report.
Well, just as part of it, you know, like you know, there's, you know, X financial controls, and this is part of the policy, and it's been followed 95% of the time, and, you know, there's a division of separation of powers, and there's, you know, delineated roles, things that, you know, you would look at when you establish, like, financial processes within an organization.
Well, I think that's kind of a two-part question for what you said is, as far as one of the things you said was proper documentation, proper receipts. Those things are reviewed during an audit. Receipts are pulled, so if there had been something that was improper, we would know about it. So that didn't happen. If you're looking for a comprehensive risk analysis of the financial procedures, that would be a separate thing that council would need to commission an outside party, you know, maybe MMRNA, pay for and have some sort of financial analysis. As it pertains to the way that Raina did the audit and the documents here, there was nothing that was out of the ordinary, otherwise that would be noted. Every receipt she pulled, every process she looked at would have met the requirements, and thus that's why it's not outlined in here. If council is looking to get a full audit of all the financial practices of the village, that would be a completely separate consultant that you would go through to do that.
So do you do random sampling?
Yes, well, random, okay, so, yes. It's a statistic, there are statistical terms, things like haphazard means something very specific, so I'm just careful about
Yeah.
what, we did pull samples of different areas like cash receipts, cash disbursements, payroll, to make sure, so we do a sampling. If there's nothing that comes out of the ordinary, you know, I'm required, if there's something bad happening, I'm required to report to council. I work for you, so,
I
you know,
guess I just would like to see the good. If there's no bad, like, I wouldn't mind even seeing the sampling that you pulled matching with the policies or processes, you know what I mean? Because, like, I enjoy reading, risk assessments and learning, you know, what was the random sample that you pulled and what did you find and it aligned with this. So like, if you're pulling that, I think it would be, you know, a good addition to the report to see if you've already done the work, you know.
That really isn't a common thing that you would see in these audit reports. What you're seeing here is very standard for a municipality. If we're looking to expand the scope of services, if you're looking for a separate report, like something like that in the future, again, that would need to be negotiated with Raina prior to beginning the audit, because it would change the way that she's reporting. What we have in front of us is a standard report. I've never seen one where it would note what sample of what invoice was pulled and what, not that that couldn't be created, just that that would be adding to the scope of services that we're engaged with Raina for.
I don't think the council is making this request. I think it's just,
Oh, no, we're not, I'm
Trustee-
just asking.
right, just asking questions.
I'll just make a comment.
Not
So,
modifying a
so if you remember, about 3 years ago, 4 years ago, we moved from using QuickBooks.
Yep.
Raina, you were here working with us at that time, to BSNA. And my recollection, and I think you have noted in maybe a couple, 3 years ago, just a line in your introduction in your audit report. But my recollection of the conversation was that you had to spend a lot of time here with the staff to sort through the kinds of things that you're addressing, Angelina. And that part of the criteria or part of the decisioning to move to the new software was because it was really hard to accurately capture what the financial activity in the village. If my assumption, and just test me out on this, is that this year and maybe last year, you had to spend far less time asking the staff for documentation and sitting here with them than you did before. Is that a fair or true statement?
That is a very fair statement, and also switching the software alone gives you a lot better internal controls, because there are things QuickBooks does that you can manipulate easily, where your new software is not that way, and now you're fully integrated general ledger software. So it all talks to each other, and, you know, if it's coming out of here, it's gotta go to there. In QuickBooks, everything was kind of an island and standalone, so it would've been much easier you can change vendor names. There were a lot of things you could do to manipulate QuickBooks that you can't do with this current software. So I do believe that the current software gives you better internal controls.
And also to piggyback on that, when we made the decision to kind of switch over from QuickBooks, we decided that we're going to, you know, start using BSNA, and then that slowly turns into working with Plant Moran. Plant Moran drafted a number of new financial practices and controls. That is how the village operated. I was at the village in my previous role when we started using Plant Moran, and remember the transition in there. And so part of bringing Plant Moran on was to highlight, you know, what necessary financial controls needed to come in, and part of having them here, helping them is, you know, that is their role, is to ensure that we are following proper financial protocol as far as that goes. And I know that there were changes made when they were brought in, but I can say in the last year that there haven't been changes to those policies, because they've been working and they've been, we were able to capture what we needed to a few years ago when they were implemented.
Right, so this is like, I think about year 3, this
Yeah.
audit with Plant. So, you know, they're lovely to work with, it's nice, we talk the same language. It makes it actually very efficient, because we know what, you know, they know what I'm looking for, and vice versa. But it really does bring in that, it's almost like, you know, they're looking at things first, and then I come in. So you're kind of getting a double layer, if you will.
You would mention, is the audit, the scope, or sorry, the timeline of the audit calendar year 2024 or matching our fiscal year?
Your fiscal year. Only MERS is the calendar year
Yeah.
basis.
Just for the valuation.
Right.
So could I get the time, like, what is the start
July
time?
1st, 23 to June 30th, 2024 is this fiscal year that I'm reporting on.
So- okay. And then within that, you'd mentioned or noted the ARPA funds. Do we still have ARPA funds in the pressure sewer available? Have we expended those?
No, and
Okay.
Raina's not the right person to ask, because
Yeah.
when Raina
Right,
wrapped
right.
this up, we weren't ready for the budget amendments we're about to talk to you about tonight. But
Yeah.
no, the pressure sewer ARPA funds have been moved. We use those to help
Okay.
pay for some of the capital improvements, including the
Excellent.
new HVAC systems here and at the PD. But again, Raina would have been looking at last year, and so when she did, they were still there. You know, we've done 6 months into this fiscal year, so there's been things that have moved.
So on page 24 of the report, Roman numeral 2, capital letter A, those A through F, are you saying that you've evaluated all of these budgetary control requirements?
No, that's laying out what is the budget process.
Okay, but do you look at these when you give us a clean audit? Like, do you look that our expenditure is not authorized by budget appropriation? Expenditures must be authorized by a budget appropriation prior to being incurred. Like, do you look at those?
Yes, and I read your minutes, so I see that the budget amendments are made appropriately. And so we also, not only do we look at that, we have to do a footnote disclosure if you're over. And that would be on the other page, page 25, where on the very bottom, you see that blank space, because there's room to list things out if you were over budget in different departments. And you adopt at the department level, at the general fund, and for the special revenue funds, you're at the fund level. So you're not over anything. The state likes us to, they want the footnote disclosure. That's basically our disclosure to the state. They want to know if you're significantly over budget on anything. And consistently. They look at communities that like consistently every year, so one year they might not bother you, but if it's like 3 years in a row where you've been really over budget, that means you're not monitoring, you're not looking at things. But it has not been the practice here at the village. You've always, well, we'll just say in the last 5 years, I could say, you've done a nice job with that.
Then to clarify, I think did you say we went 10,000 into the general fund?
You were projecting to, your budget, your final budget.
And where did we land?
You added 310.
We gained, so
Correct.
we added an additional 310.
Correct.
And that was that
The Headley amount.
Headley override.
reflected as a result of the Headley override, correct?
Yes.
Okay. For the highlights, what would you say is the area of improvement or the bad?
You really have to watch the pension liability. It's a moving target. It is a soft number. However, it's a significant number. And of course, we want to take care of our police department. Council's always had a strong support for the police department. These numbers are, it's a combination of legacy costs and current employees. And you need to keep this benefit to attract public safety officers, because you're competing with all the other communities. But this number just seems to, you've done a nice job of that. Pension grant really does help. And hopefully, we're gonna see that next year in the actuarial valuation. But respectfully, I'm here to give you the report on the historical information.
Yeah.
And then you will move into the budget, and you can prioritize where you think, once you lay out the budget in big picture, if there's anything you want extra that you'd like, a lump sum contribution, or maybe a monthly contribution you want to throw toward the pension plan, or not. But those are the kind of things, that's what I want you to keep in the back of your mind as you're looking. Because, again, your operating expenditures are very stable. That's a good thing. So that means when we're throwing money at something, it's a capital or infrastructure type, one time, not every year type of thing. So you've made significant improvements. Look at all the great infrastructure we put in here in the village.
I'm pursuing David's point on pension. We greatly benefited from that grant. That's not, it might happen again. It probably won't. it really pushed us into the safe zone from a yellow zone on our pension contributions as a village, recalling last year. What I'm taking from your comments is that we would be wise to, as we're preparing the budget for next year, to ensure that we've set aside enough funds to be able to maintain our level of 64% contribution. Is that a fair
Oh, yeah.
statement?
I was looking at what your,
It can be, I think that in a perfect world, that's a fair statement. I think that it would be a very difficult thing for us to, there aren't funds available necessarily to put more over there than kind of what we have. I mean, it leads to the question of, we have a revenue situation. We need to figure out how to bring more revenue onto our hands. And I think one of, a public safety millage could help solve some of that issue, but to think that we could have our pension liability become more healthy based on budgeting, we just don't have the funds that would be available
Fair
to
enough.
do
It's
that.
just it's on the list of.
Yep.
Okay.
Yes,
thanks. That's what I-
absolutely.
the
but,
only
and
point.
you are at 54.6% funded. Like I said, it moves, even if you threw all the money at it and you were at 100% this year, next year that could be 97. Again, the moving target. However, the state does want you at 60%.
Yeah.
So keep that in mind. You're at 54.6, it would be great to get to 60, so.
Is there a simplified way to explain how that calculation is amounted to, the soft numbers?
That's a whole other session, but.
Fair enough, and if the answer is no, that's perfectly fine.
But the big things are, your service cost and the interest on the current outstanding total pension liability. If what we're contributing every year at least matches that, then we're at least staying afloat, or at least not going, further down. Again, you see how that net investment gain or loss every year significantly impacts us. Can really throw our numbers. So those are the kind of things we look at. And again, experience rates, it depends on the age, the pool of employees you have under the pension plan impacts it. And the state also dictates basically our actuarial assumptions. Some years they get more and more conservative. They try and do a uniform assumption, so that everyone's reporting to them based on similar numbers. Those are the big bullet points on the pension.
Okay, and how does the number of officers impact the liability?
Yes,
Would
both
you-
current
substantially?
active employees
Yeah.
and retired ones.
Okay.
Dan, you got anything?
No questions, sir.
Nope.
Mike? I have
All
two-
good.
I have two questions. So our road bond, is that fully amortizing? I mean, you said we have an $8 million balance and we
Left.
took it down by 800 grand this year and we have 7 years left. Now, I know the interest portion will reduce as the bond reduces, but I did the math.
You're at 8.6 at the end of this, after you've paid 840 this year,
Correct, and you said it expired in,
2032,
which is 7 years from now.
right.
So that would, well, maybe that means 8 more payments. Eight more annual, yeah, 8
Yeah.
more annual contributions,
Well, this
so.
year's almost done, 2025, so we're not counting that one.
Right, that's why
so
you
that's my
plan on
question.
Seven?
So that's
Yeah.
my question, is if we've only paying down around 800 grand a year and we have 7 years left, when I do the math, that's around $6 million and the bond's 8
If
million.
you,
$6 million.
Page 30 gives the annual principal and interest breakdown of
Oh,
what
we
you're
have an
paying.
amortization schedule.
I mean, it's
Gotcha.
by fiscal year.
Got it.
All right, so 30 to 32.
Theoretically,
is
won't
still-
that be the point that we would go back and have to redo our roads?
That's how it was set up. It's based on the aging of the roads.
Right.
Well, I hope we don't have to do the roads in 32.
Me too.
That would only,
What year?
that would be
It-
10
like We
years.
just finished that.
It's a 10-year bond. No, those roads will last more than 10 years. We should go a few years where we don't have any debt on the roads. Okay,
What are we, about 15 years?
Yes, it's about, well, it's about a 15-year, it would be about a 15-year bond, because it was
Yeah.
what, 2017?
Oh,
And
right.
they expire in
15, that's right. We did it
2032.
in 17, not 20, right. Okay, and then the other question, so that generous contribution we got to the pension liability, that we are anticipating was gonna be a one-time event? That's not anything we could ever kind of plan on seeing, or never know, but nothing that's allocated in the future by the feds?
That
Or
was
the
the
state, the
the
state,
state.
yeah.
They're not talking pension right now.
Yeah, okay.
They're onto roads now, so that's,
Okay.
no,
very good.
I was hoping they would kind of move into, you know, helping more communities, that type of thing on the pension side, but they did the one-time thing, and
That
then
was a
now they've,
one-time deal. Okay.
the 150 million was their total appropriation on that year they did that.
Sorry, just to go back on the roads, if you could clarify, I'm looking at the amortization right now, and it's increasingly going up. Is that contemplated? Oh, sorry, no, never mind. Offset of interest and principal. So, got it. The amount. should
Same
be-
Principal's
payment,
going
yeah.
up, interest
Same
going
prin-
down.
Right.
Yes, yep.
Right, keep
yep,
the, you're
yep,
keeping your payment the same.
So, right, so that shows that it
Yeah,
should amortize
yeah.
out. Those last 3 years, there's way less interest. So, do we take any action on this, or do we just
No.
accept it and?
Nope, this is going to be available on the website for any residents that like to review it. It's important that we present it and talk about it and answer questions, but there's no formal action needed on
Okay,
it.
we'll
Can do a
use this.
motion to receive and file if you wanted to.
I'll move to receive and file the, would this be a
2024.
2024-2025 audit?
I'll second.
No,
2024.
23.
Oh, sorry, 2023-2024 audit.
I'll second.
Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Thank you.
Raina, thank you so much.
Thank you, Raina.
And thank you to the staff.
And yeah,
they-
and again, to our residents, this is available online if anybody wants to see it. And then, of course, we'll refer to this as we move forward in our budgetary process. Reports of village officers and agents.
Can we do public
yeah.
comment first?
Oh, I'm sorry. They're so close together. So, public requests and comments. Anybody from the public that would like to address something that's not on the agenda?
I would.
Kopelman?
Jeff Kopelman, 30895 Oak Leaf Lane. I hope you'll recall I was here last month discussing the rural environment of the village of Franklin, historic significance, hoping all of you, as new council members, as a new council, were aware of what our charter and our preamble said, et cetera, et cetera. I want you to know that after that meeting, I had numerous phone calls and some visits to my home, which is why I'm here right now again. And there are as I said last month, there are a group of passionate villagers who are interested in making sure that because Franklin was the first historic district, as we all know, in the state of Michigan, award 1969, we do not do anything to get ourselves delisted. Places do get delisted. I just hope everyone's aware of, before we do anything, we're very careful. We all come under the auspices of the Department of Interior's rules and regulations for historic designated properties. We're not going to discuss it now. It's 172 pages long, so I only have 2 minutes. But I will tell you that I think somebody should review it and make sure I have read it. There are a lot of things in there about altering things, changing things, changing materials that are used, et cetera, et cetera. So I just want, just as a caution, to make sure, because I will tell you that this group of people that called me are very passionate, making sure that this village keeps its historic designation and does not do anything that would get us either in some kind of problem or get ourselves delisted. So that's all I wanted to say. Thank you very much, and I appreciate your time, and have a very nice evening.
Thank you.
Jeff, are you talking about the federal level, or are you talking about the state level?
Right now, I'm talking about the federal.
Okay.
okay?
Yeah.
There are state things, as you know, but the Fed overrides the state.
Yeah.
If you check the Department of Interior regulations. Okay?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Move this down. I live at 26197 Meadow Drive. This just a quick, I've been meaning to come, I'm not gonna get emotional, I hope, but I've been meaning to come since last August. I just wanted to do like a heartfelt thank you to David. Roger's not here, the EMTs, paramedics. During your Music on the Green the last time in August, there was an underground bee's nest, and he wanted to come up here. He got stung multiple times, and we had to go to the ER, get rushed there, and the ER doctor said if everyone involved hadn't acted as fast, that it wouldn't have turned out as it had. So I've been meaning to come up here. David, I reached out to the next day and let him know what happened, and immediately reached out to Roger and took care of the underground nest. So I just want to say thank you so much to everybody, everyone that was there. So, yeah, that's all I wanted to say.
Thank you.
Really appreciate it.
Yeah,
Thank you.
we're glad to hear everyone was okay, and you thank our chief of police there and chief of our fire department, Averbuck, who's out there as well. It's their amazing men and women that
They acted so fast,
that did it.
saved him, so it was amazing.
Absolutely, we're great. Glad to hear everything worked out all right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sure, thanks for coming in.
Thanks, Charlie.
Oh, that's pretty nice.
Anybody
We don't
else?
usually get that.
All right, now we can move on to our reports of village officers and agents. Chief Lawson?
Raise this up a little bit. So in front of you, you have the new and hopefully final monthly report. Stephanie Longworth worked on this. I've given her a lot of additional duties since I came on board, and she's stepped up to the plate. She's been outstanding. So this is a result of some of her hard work. One of the things that you might notice on the monthly report is we had some break-ins over on Helmandale, break-ins of vehicles. And we went over and we processed one of the vehicles. We found blood. We did get some DNA, sent it up to Oakland County Lab where it's being analyzed right now. We did get a suspect from some other means. And another local jurisdiction did take a suspect in custody that we believe is linked to these larcenies. So once we get that DNA evidence back from the lab, hopefully we can match them and bring charges. So that's a positive. Any questions on the report?
Just on the last statement that you made, so historically, the break-ins that we had were from unlocked cars, but it sounds like there was blood, it was probably breaking of glass?
So they broke into some cars that were unlocked, and then they broke the glass of another vehicle, and he happened to cut himself, so.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Just a question. So, parts of that neighborhood are easy in and out from Telegraph.
Correct.
I know that one of the access roads has been blocked off. I think it's still blocked off. South of 13 Mile.
Okay.
Maybe it isn't any longer. This has been anyway, my point is that easy in and out from Telegraph Road has been a discussion item for a long time. And I wonder if you have some thoughts about how to make that neighborhood a little less accessible, or what kinds of longer-term fixes would you propose for
I think as
that
far as the
neighborhood?
long-term fixes, I would like to think about that a little bit more, get some input from my team. But, certainly we need our residents' help. If they see something, if they hear something, if they have something on their cameras, they got to give us a call right away. We've obviously, when we had the break-ins of the vehicles, we put more resources into those neighborhoods for a week or two. So, but it's that easy access from
Yeah.
Telegraph that makes it difficult.
Yeah. I guess I'm just asking, is there anything we can do structurally to make it harder for
I certainly
people
can
who don't
circle back to you
belong
on that.
there
Sure,
to get in?
absolutely.
Okay.
I just wanted to thank you and your team, because I know when the break-ins happened, it was someone I knew, and immediately I got notified you, and you were like, we'll take care of it, and your team was out there, and your officers were there within minutes. So just commend your
Thank you.
quick response.
Thank you.
And I know that it makes the neighbors feel, seen and heard when the police show up when there's an emergency, so thank you.
Okay. I think you noted before that the traffic tickets are down, and they'll probably continue to be down, because I really stress to the officers that I want them to be seen in the neighborhoods. I want them to be seen in the SAD district over in Bingham Farms. And that's to me, I know that people drive aggressively, and that's important to enforce that, but I really would like to see them in the neighborhoods. And I think that's where you're going to see a few less tickets every year. One other thing I wanted to say, and I don't want to make, it's not political by any means, so please don't take it that way, but I was approached by some trustees in Bingham Farms and residents here in Franklin regarding what does local law enforcement, or what role does local law enforcement play in illegal immigration enforcement? So I just want to talk about, in my opinion, as a police chief here now, that that's beyond our scope, that's beyond our mission as a 12-person police department, that we have no authority as local police officers to enforce federal law. So, you know, I want to focus on community policing, our community partnership. So, I mean, if you want to discuss that on the side with me or have a different opinion, I'm open to talk to you, but that's just what I've been consistently messaging out to everyone that's asked me that question.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you.
All right, appreciate it.
Chief? Good evening.
You've received our written report. There's only one thing I wanted to add, and that is with the winter weather that never ends, it seems like, with 3 snowstorms coming up potentially. Please do try and take care of your driveways in terms of ice buildup. A week and a half ago, we had a significant rain over on a Thursday or Friday, which turned into ice, and the end result is the fire department is responding to more medicals now in the village of Franklin than we ever have on a monthly basis. And as a result, we're finding more and more driveways that we either do not have access to with their ambulances, or while we do have access, becomes very difficult to get patients out because of the ice buildup and the snow buildup. So just if you have a home in the village, we'd appreciate just taking a look-see outside to make sure your driveway is suitable for visitors, should you call us. Other than that, thank you for your time, and I'll entertain any questions that you have.
Is there any additional work or resources you'll have to put towards the Franklin with that gas fireplace proposal?
We haven't really been approached with that, and Bill Dinnan, being the building official for the village, is handling all building issues. But in terms of general gas fireplace that's outside, if they're still going off of that plan, there shouldn't be anything that we'd have to deal with.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Appreciate you.
I just want to say, I am the new fire liaison, so I participated in my first meeting, which was really my first experience to get a thorough walkthrough of the police department, the fire department, so.
Right.
Thanks to you and Richard Rubin for showing me around, and I look forward to working with you guys.
It's appreciated.
Yep. Kathy has had that duty for the last 4 years, so I look forward to it.
Great. Thank you.
Anybody else? All right.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Tony.
Thank you.
Good evening.
Thank you.
Lance? Good evening.
Good evening, trustees and president. Please accept my written report in the capacity as the village treasurer. The bills list for this month totals $320,830.85, and the amounts on the bills list are consistent with normal monthly spending. The expenditures are generally consistent with our budget. The bills list for this month includes a large entry, which we've touched on last month, of $25,500 for replacement HVAC systems for both the police and the Broughton buildings that we paid to Airconics Heating and Air Conditioning. I'm not clear, was that total of $50,000, $51,000? This was half and half, split up, okay. The village has sufficient funds to meet its current and anticipated obligations. The list of account balances in the package is as of February the 1st that we hold at First Merchant Bank. Any questions?
I was wondering about the short-term investments. Where are we at on that?
We had been waiting for the audit to finish. tonight's the audit presentation. So, I mean, Lance and I have already met and we've discussed that, but you need to have all your final accounting numbers in your audit before you know what funds you would have available to go ahead and look at. and
I'm sure we're going to
optimize
have
that.
a meeting in the next month, like a, finance committee meeting, talk, talk about our future budget plans, and I'll bring it up, and then at the next meeting, I'll give you a little bit of a report on that.
I'll just note,
Yeah.
just gently,
Mhm.
that this came up to this village council in April of 2024. And we've been working on setting this up, getting this short-term overnight investments going since then.
Yeah.
I would hate for us to reach a year to try and do something that should be pretty straightforward.
I'm in your shoes. Yeah, we were also waiting, I think, from Plant Moran to let us know how much liquidity we had.
And you had different management, you know, you don't know how much of that, you know, almost everything that comes from the table is an action item that I take. So if it was something that was discussed, you know, in the spring and stuff, I can't really attest to where that fell on priorities. I know that when I first got over here, I met with Lance and we discussed it, and we decided we would wait till we had end of the year budget numbers from the final audit to go ahead and look at what we had to move forward. But, I mean, I can't really speak to what happened last year, but it is something that's on our radar to look into.
Yep. So I'll keep you posted as we get more data.
Thanks.
Okay.
Couple questions, just generally, on the budget, or sorry, the spending. So on the first page, the item around Comcast internet to the Krieger House, are we separately paying for internet at the Krieger House compared to here?
There are two different addresses of service.
Have we tried to use a meshing system or something that we could project Wi-Fi so that we don't have to duplicate expenses?
We had looked at that, but the current Wi-Fi that we were working with didn't have the capability to do that. We've looked at some other Wi-Fi and looking at going with some other companies to try and save some money on that. It's something that staff's been pricing and looking at.
Okay.
Let me interject. I'm an attorney for the Birmingham Area Cable Board, and sometimes there are requests, and I think there was a request from Franklin, I don't know if it was for the Krieger House, for reimbursement of that. So there could be a wash there.
Okay, that's helpful. Yeah, I mean, I know that,
Do you want us to let you sit down?
yeah, you can sit down. This is not questions for you.
Yeah,
Thank
we're
you.
done with our treasurer's report.
Yeah.
We're gonna move on.
I'm standing here.
No, yeah, so,
So we're gonna move on to submission of current bills now.
Sorry
So
about
go
that.
ahead, David.
yes, sorry about that.
No, we're good. So we're on bills. So any other questions you have?
Yeah, just again, piggybacking off of what I said, I know that like a lot of, you go to a public area or a public park, a lot of them project the Wi-Fi onto like a green space or a shared space. And so I'm wondering if a similar system or even a meshing system again, where if we had a router sitting here, could it connect over to the Krieger House? Just some things to think about there. I guess the next question would be, under consumer energy, we have one for Broughton, one for police, and then one that's unlisted. Do we know what that's tied to? So, sorry, it just says consumer energy 11/16/2024, whereas the other ones are.
Probably
Okay,
Yeah.
all right. Okay. The second page on the 117, it's 35764, Franklin View Enterprises Building Bond Refund of 2,000.
So that's where we have to refund some of the builders, they come in, they pay the bond.
Okay.
And then when they're done with their project, they refund them.
Excellent, thank you. The arborist fee for reviewing tree ordinances, $1,200.
She came in and talked a long time with Jenna, and she'd gone through all of our ordinances, and it just was a very long conversation. She's not cheap. So
What were we trying to achieve with that?
it was something that was prior to, it was when Roger was here, and it was with Megan, and there was some questions on the tree ordinances. It's just trying to get it clear, and I'm trying to get Jenna clear too on how to bill people, how it works, and that was what all of that Basically a training for staff, because what happens is we get, in our building department, our building clerk fields phone calls all day for different tree, concerns, complaints, and so it took place a while ago. It would have been when Roger was still here, and it was to build that communication and do that training with Jenna so that she was aware as our building clerk, when to call Save a Tree, when not to call the arborist, what the processes would be there, what are the things that she needs to be looking for. And I can say it was a very successful training that Jenna is able to answer a lot, if not almost all of the tree phone calls that'll come through. She has a pretty good relationship with our arborist now and is able to get a phone call and get things investigated very quickly. It is complicated.
Was there any outputs or deliverables from that conversation that can be like quick start guides that we could give to people, or is there like a training that we can? There was probably not. It was like a verbal training.
Like, Save a Tree came to like block party and had a little booth at the end. I don't know if you guys saw it.
Well, I'm just saying, like, if there's a training, it would be good to be like, oh, you moved into Franklin, like, here's a review of our tree ordinances, like.
I think that would go beyond the scope of what this training is. Like,
So
this
this
was
is just a
just a
one-on-one training?
review. I don't know. I wasn't,
Yeah.
it's my understanding that it was.
Jenna, if you get a better understanding, and myself.
And answer
Because
questions.
we have that legal review of all the ordinances, which includes our tree ordinances that we're paying.
Very
like
different.
35.
Yeah,
Yeah,
those
that's
are
what, when I saw it, I was like,
Oh.
didn't that ordinance review include the tree ordinances?
Yeah.
So
No,
this is
then
more
that
of a
makes sense.
tree ordinance training.
Right, and as it pertains as an arborist, where the codification and the review by Legal is to review the legality of the ordinances, not necessarily the practice of any sort of tree ordinance.
applied.
Okay. And then the, again, for the social media, for the village, January through February, 4,000, what's kind of entailed within that amount?
Do you want to go? No, go ahead. I mean, we went over all of this multiple times when we brought the contract before to talk about the scope of services. I wasn't a part of hiring Andrea. I think you would probably be better to speak to that, but Andrea has a list of items that she completes every month. We're in contact with her all the time, giving her information. She's generating things to put out on social media. She's taking metrics. She does things like, look at media contacts. Go ahead, Susan.
All Facebook, all Instagram for the village and for Main Street, it's split between both.
Okay, my personal preference is if we're paying 2,000 a month for that, if we could have some type of output back of like what we're receiving for it to justify the expense, because after I saw this expense, I went on to some of the social media accounts and saw like 5 posts over the past 2 months, and we're paying $4,000. And so if we're not delivering outputs back of what are we getting for that expense, it's hard to consider whether or not it's worth it.
I think that Andrea would be more than willing to come do a presentation to council.
Okay.
But I think David's onto something. You know, a contractor who's working on has got the laundry list. I mean, I think a quick status report that she could dictate and just give us a quick and dirty something for the record. That seems reasonable for a contractor
Yep,
to do.
we'll have her come to council and do that.
No, I'm specifically saying on a monthly or bi-monthly basis, to have her do just half a page. This is what I did this month.
Yep.
So that we can take a look.
I'm sure that's no issue. She has measurable benchmarks that are outlined in her contract. She can absolutely come do a review at council.
Okay.
I was gonna ask that before David got into it, because we've discussed this before, and I would be looking at deliverables in that contract. How many months have we retained Walker? About 6 months?
About 6 months.
Yeah. Yeah, I would like to see a report on deliverables.
Yeah, and just to echo, I want to make sure that it aligns with your plan, Meg. Like, you did a really great comms plan, and you gave us like months to give feedback on it, and you didn't even have to do that. And like, I want to make sure that the person that we hire to execute it can deliver on what you put forth, because that was like your strategy that we saw. You know what I mean? So like, I want to just make sure it like aligns because she was hired before you came on board.
Yep.
So like, this council reviewed your strategy, you
Right,
know?
yes, yep. I think it's time that Andrea comes in front and talks about what she's been doing and what her plan is for those types of things.
Are you done?
Yeah.
Okay. So in November, there was a $4,600 Plant Moran audit services fee. And then in January, there's another $3,000 one. So these seem high? Are these normal monthly fees? Okay.
They're not normal monthly fees, but they are in, conjunction with the audit. Plant Moran does a lot more, is here during the days for the audits, and so some of those are those costs. Another thing that you'll see it reflected here is, the work that we had that was helping sort through these budget amendments and what was where, and, if you recall, they were at our last meeting, they clocked some hours here, it's like, those little things all add up. So definitely preparing a budget amendment takes time from Plant Moran, and then having them attend the meeting, and, we're obviously paying for all of that time. They were at a, so they're not repeated every month, but it is common when we're ending the year with the audit and preparing wherever we're at 6 months in with budget amendments to incur costs with that.
And then the HRC, like all of this Irving easement study, Franklin sanitary pressure, it's all like $17,000 out
Yeah.
of the general fund. Who commissions these studies?
Roger did. So I received a pile of invoices that had not been paid. Most of them were from this May 11th time period and an October 26th time period. Like prior to October 26th, so it would have been in September. I reviewed all the invoices. They were sent back to me from HRC, and they were inquiring why, especially these professional services dating back through April and May of last year, had not been followed up on. Now, I did look at the work. I talked to Nancy about them. It sounds like it was something that just got lost in translation. I don't know if Roger didn't initial and get them, checks and balances where they needed to get paid. Regardless, these are not for work that was just completed. The bulk of the invoices that you're seeing here today, including, like almost that full amount, is from back in April and May of last year and back early fall of this year.
So like this would be my question. Lingering invoices, does that not like, is that like just an okay thing for a municipality to have, like an audit? Like, shouldn't we have financial practices that say like, your invoices should be paid within not you, this is what I'm saying,
Right.
like what, the audit was clean, so it said all of our internal controls and financial processes were followed and they were in alignment with GAAP principles. But like when you have invoices that aren't paid till the end of January from April that have just been lingering and we're getting notices and it's falling through the cracks, like why wouldn't an audit pick that up?
Because staff wouldn't even know about this. So it's my understanding that these were emailed to Roger and then never made it past his inbox. So they're not being tagged, there's nowhere that would record them as outstanding on our records because we don't even know that they're outstanding, we hadn't received the invoices.
So you only look at the record, so like, because there was a part of your audit that said management practices. And
Right.
so for a management practice to be not looking at your emails of bills, does that not, and I'm just asking, like, where would that?
Not on the auditor. That
Yeah,
would probably
you know
be
what I
more
mean?
in
I'm
like
like-
a comprehensive financial services audit that you would maybe pay MMRNA for or someone else. Maybe they would look at that, but Raina wouldn't look at Roger's emails or see what's there. She would have no way of knowing
Well,
that.
I would say, like, if you had a project going with HRC and you had bills like for services for February, for March, and you knew that that project was ongoing, and maybe the invoices stopped at March, we, as part of the audit, we would inquire, where's the bill for April? Was there a bill for April? That kind of thing.
But you didn't even see it to know to ask it. is
Right,
what you're
and it's
saying.
These are studies and things, they're not like ongoing projects that we're looking for completeness on your billing.
And the invoices that I got, these older ones, there's more than one for a month, right? Because they're billed to certain projects too. So in Raina's example there, when she's looking at these ongoing projects, there probably was invoices for the ongoing projects, but you wouldn't necessarily see the other 3 invoices that
Yeah,
weren't
I mean, it's
passed
just
along.
like if you weren't so thorough and, going through every piece of paper, like these would have lingered and not been paid, and there's no checks on that, because like you said, it went to one inbox.
Well, all right, so first of all, if we have a contractor that's gonna send us invoices, they should send us a written invoice to the Village of Franklin. I mean, to assume that an invoice to our
I think
village
that's a really good
administrator
point.
is an assumption that it's gonna find, I mean, you
Yep.
can presume that, but as a contractor, if they haven't been paid since April, I would have assumed that some other communication would have come along. So maybe Roger and Eddie or Nancy, whoever over there, might have had an understanding, because, yeah, that does seem like an excessive amount of time that the contractor themselves wouldn't have done more than
It seems to
send
be.
another email to Roger?
It seems to be that was kind of historically speaking was quite common, and then every 6 months or so, HRC would do an audit of what was outstanding and try
I mean,
and pull
first
that
of all, I
up.
don't think any of us
so.
are a big fan of that, because that makes it really
No.
hard for us to keep track of what they're spending and when they're spending it and
And
what
how
they're
to
spending it
budget.
on.
Yeah.
I had some questions. Do you have more?
Yeah, just one more thing. With these assessment and these studies.
Yes.
Like, I know that you didn't commission that, but is it normal for an assessment or study to be commissioned without an action that the council wants to take after seeing these assessment and studies? Like, to me, you would commission a study for a certain action, and these studies just seem like they were performed, but
No,
From
that
what I-
study was commissioned.
Yeah, these were commissioned.
That
By
100%
the
was by the
council?
council, 100%. Now,
and to take what action? That's my question.
we did a full, we paid HRC to drive every single street in the Village of Franklin and do an analysis of the stormwater situation. To analyze ditches that were either overgrown or needed maintenance, culverts that were lacking. This project went on throughout the course of the whole summer. They did it in various stages. We kept getting, the map kept expanding throughout the course. And that's some questions I have as to how much we ultimately spent, and have we now finished paying for it, being that my understanding is the report's long been completed. So I wouldn't mind getting a final total on what we paid and kind of analyze it to what we had anticipated.
Yep, I have a final
100%, the
total.
council commissioned that study
And
as
so
part of
what are
our.
we supposed to do after we receive that study?
Well, that
That's
would
what
be
we're
up to
gonna begin to
us.
use to figure out how we're gonna go about and address and
What's
fix
next?
our ongoing stormwater problem that you might not see on your street, but residents see all over the village, and we couldn't be in a position to determine what's wrong if we didn't first inventory what the
And it was
problems
so
were.
much more than just like determine what's wrong. I mean, the study is very comprehensive. I think it's important to note that there had been really no foundational engineering work done for any of our stormwater. And to date, we do not have updated GIS of our stormwater infrastructure. I mean, that is a red flag, right? We commissioned this study, which in total, it looks like based on this invoice that I can see here, was about $50,000. It was well over a year's worth of engineering work that was focused on stormwater. Some of it was repairing stormwater, some of it infrastructure, some was implementing new. A lot of it was looking at the village and trying to get a comprehensive map of what was going on in the stormwater. So it is steep, but we had no real records or organized organization of this previously, and thus this study was absolutely necessary. At that point, we would have had these ARPA funds. That's why they were put over into the stormwater to help support this project. And yeah, it is unfortunate that we still have these outstanding invoices. They were just brought to my attention, and I did talk to Nancy and verify them. They do pertain to legitimate work that was completed on the
So
study.
can those get kicked over to the infrastructure committee then, so we can read the studies?
Well, we need to have a council special study session to talk about this
Well,
study.
all right, so with regard to that study that HRC did.
Yep.
Two things. If you could figure out if it's a way to do it based on drainage assessment study in the budget, give us an idea of roughly what we spent on that study.
Okay.
And then, last time I saw it, it was pretty complete and is like 30 pages on 11 by 17 paper. So a lot to print, but.
It was like 200 pages is
Okay.
the final report. The books are like this.
Yeah.
So what I was thinking is we need at least an hour to sit as council to pick through that. I
To
could
the
print
extent
copies.
they could be sent to
Yep.
us electronically, because they're much easier to read on the computer, because you can blow up certain areas. And then, yeah, I mean, that is definitely what we had envisioned using to determine first, what are the most important areas that need to be addressed, and two, analyze, ultimately how we're gonna potentially budget for it, and work with the residents to figure out to what extent we get if we get any contribution from the residents who, it's their culverts and their ditches and things like that, which totally shouldn't be our responsibility, but are sort of falling into our hands over time and lack of upkeep.
Because I think we haven't received an updated work plan.
Yeah, you got one. I gave my last one to a resident, so I'm out of mine.
Okay.
But yeah,
This is it?
that's,
I think the work plan that I saw when I came in was updated, but I don't think you've seen a final report.
no.
No, we haven't.
Because there hasn't been a good way to get that out, but we can figure that out and go forward and
That's part of it.
work on distributing that and getting a meeting scheduled with all of council to just to go through the report.
And then, was it determined to be paid out of the general fund instead of the other funds? It couldn't have been paid out of like wastewater or anything? All the studies, like none of these drainage or anything, right? We had to use general funds.
I don't know. I don't know. I'd have to look at that.
Okay.
That would have all happened before I was here, and I'm not sure how
Yeah,
that
it
was financed. I don't
It's
know
just
what
hard
was
to
put on
pieces
stormwater
together
and what
when there
wasn't.
was a lack of documentation. Not, again, your fault, you're like an investigator.
Mike, you got anything?
No, I'm fine.
Dan?
Nothing for me.
Pam?
No.
Okay. Could get a motion to approve the bills list?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Special reports. First is the president's report. I only have two things to state. The first is sort of like this is gonna be a PSA for our, if I miss one of our bodies, I apologize, but it's the beginning of the year and I've started to get in the mail. The village has 3 non-village controlled entities that serve huge purposes in the village. The first is the Franklin Community Association, which we all know owns and operates our open space area behind us and champions several events throughout the year, which culminates with the roundup. So I urge all of our residents, particularly new residents, to find out about the FCA. Membership in the FCA is, and all 3 of the organizations that I'm about to mention are very reasonable. Resident membership dues, all under $100, and every one of those bodies go a huge way in allowing them to operate, and their operations have huge benefits for us. So there's the Franklin Community Association, there's the Friends of the Franklin Library, and the library is a wonderful place. It's been continuing to modernize itself, and I'm sure a lot of us know about it and where it's located. The third entity, which probably gets the least amount of support from the village, is the Franklin Historical Society. The Franklin Historical Society champions our historic district, I'm sure many residents don't realize we have a wonderful historic museum located off of Kirk Lane and 13 Mile Road. It's in a residential home, so you might not even realize that it's a museum. I've been there. It's an amazing place. It is a kind of a miniature version of like a Henry Ford museum. You walk in that place and you definitely step back into time. It's super, super children friendly. They have lots of activities for kids to do while adults are there. And the hours are fairly limited, but they have a website, and I kind of urge all our residents to support each of those organizations. Their dues go a huge way in allowing them to exist. They get tons of volunteer support that, you know, it'd be great for the residents to show their support, and that's really all I have to say on that. So, the second item is we are still looking for applicants for the Planning Commission and the Zoning Board of Appeals. We just went through an election season. A lot of people ran for positions. They've sort of disappeared. We've had people in the past that have urged and tried to get on boards that might have not retried again. So I just want to remind everybody, we've barely gotten enough applicants to fill the positions, which isn't an ideal situation for us. We'd like to have at least more applicants than we have openings. So we're going to probably have to make decisions on all of those next month. So in the course of the next 3 weeks, because we'd like to have everything to us a week before our meeting, anybody that would like to be on the Zoning Board of Appeals or the Planning Commission, please get your information in. That's all I got. Anybody else?
I have a question. How many do we need for zoning board to make the appointment? Because I know we already have 2.
Well, we have 1 opening on the Zoning Board of Appeals and 2 openings on the Planning Commission.
Okay. So can't we just do the zoning if we already have 2 applicants?
I guess we could. We don't have, I mean, it hasn't been circulated to us.
No, and it's not on the agenda.
I mean, I don't know if we had it in time for when we had
Okay.
the legal committee.
Okay, I guess I'm just unclear on the process because I know these applicants came in December, and just from a retaining volunteers point of view, I know these applicants have like cleared their schedule, hired babysitters the last 2 council meetings, expecting it to be on the agenda, and then it's not. So just, I think in order to like show them that we appreciate them volunteering, it should just be like communicate to them if it's gonna be like 3 months or long past when they applied, just to keep them in contact. And because I had a text from someone's like, did I do something wrong? You know, I filed my application in early December. So I think just like the uncertainty in the application process, not knowing when the appointment's coming, gets, you know, people get hesitant, like, oh, was I not qualified enough? So I think that maybe having like it put out there that like we had to post it again, or we don't have enough applicants or something like that, because according to the appointment policy, if we have more than 1 applicant, we could make the appointment.
The policy is just a recommendation for appointments, and we open application periods, but like in this case, I wouldn't have known that it was gonna be open this long. But what is appropriate, I think, is we're hoping to be able to make these appointments in March. I can have our clerk follow up with some emails that say, you know, that they're reviewing and that they will hope to have these appointments made in March. And we could do that now. There wouldn't be something proactively that we could have done because we're not sure when those appointments are gonna be made. Those are council appointments. But, definitely the applications are still open, and we can follow up with applicants that have already applied to let them know that we're at least looking for the ZBA in March.
Thanks.
I think there's another group that deserves mention here as we're talking about our volunteer organizations, and that's Mobile Watch.
Oh.
We don't talk about Mobile Watch very much anymore, and I don't think that there are enough volunteers to maintain it. But Mobile Watch has been a standard bearer of public safety and security in this community for decades and works in tandem with our police department. And I know Chief Lawson and predecessors have been very, very supportive and favorable to Mobile Watch. And so I would urge people to reconsider that organization as well. I know that they meet monthly, and they've had a difficult time recruiting additional volunteers. And lastly, I'll say that, I do a weekly TV program called The Franklin Show, which is now on multiple platforms all over Michigan and now beyond. And we have thousands of viewers. And I've made it my point to try to invite Franklin businesses, entrepreneurs, authors, public officials, the museum. If you're reluctant to come on the show, I'd love to know why, because it's free publicity. And I have moved beyond Franklin out of necessity and have begun doing some big entertainment shows with music. And we're doing a DJ retrospective with the WRIF Dream Team this Wednesday. The original ABC Dream Team, which was JJ and George Beyer, Ken Calvert, Karen Savelli, Steve Costan, and I've got hundreds of people waiting for that show. So it's a fun event. I enjoy doing it. I started it to help publicize things that were happening in our community. I've gone beyond that, but I'm open and would love to continue to provide information that's useful to our community as well. That's it.
Thanks, Mike. It's definitely entertaining.
A couple things from me. One, I think one of the things that I don't need a response on right now, but just keeping an eye on the CDBG funds and whether or not they'll be available, just given where things are at. So once we know kind of how disbursements will work, just a report would be appreciated. Again, I don't know what the timeline on that, but just something to be mindful of. Next, I would like to entertain the conversation of having a workshop for the council members before, in the near future, before either the March or April meeting, so that we can reset our priorities for what we're looking to accomplish on council. It's something that we had initially kicked off during the previous council, but now with new trustees, our efforts kind of died with the last council. I think it's time to pick it back up. I think it will help align not just our focus, but also as a representative to the Planning Commission, help to align what we're trying to drive forward as well as what the Planning Commission is working on. So again, I think that will get us all moving in the same direction. The other thing is, I guess piggybacking off the appointment process, the only thing that I would say is that I know we said that the appointment process is a recommendation. I would say that it is a recommendation to the extent that there is no legal obligation on us to follow it. It's merely a policy, and I do acknowledge that. But I do also want to say that the reason that we put it into place is to have predictability for applicants, to ourselves as well. Because the truth is I'm less concerned about saying the deadline for when somebody has to apply, and more about making sure that, one, we're now in a position where the Planning Commission is down to people, and I'm sure that's felt as we saw with the special meeting. They actually had to, in order to hold the special meeting, had to kind of work through their schedules to make sure that they could actually have quorum. So we're putting them at a disadvantage by not pushing it forward, and I know that the ZBA is a little bit easier in the sense that they only have one spot that they need to fill. So if they have 2 applicants, we can immediately move forward, whereas the Planning Commission, I would guess we would want probably 3 applicants for consideration to the extent that it's reasonable to do so. But I just don't want to continue to delay the appointments and put our boards, commissions in a position where they need the additional resources of the melting pot of minds. So I just wanted to provide that as kind of the last thing.
Anybody else?
Trustee Gates and I did the MML training this weekend. It was really great. So thank you for registering us, Dina. Thank you for recommending it. Mike, I don't know if you're gonna talk about this, but you're doing a meet and greet tomorrow at the library? Okay.
Yep.
So you'll mention it, because I went to Chiefs, it was really good and well attended, and I wanna make sure you have fans there. And then, Susan, are you gonna talk about the accreditation meeting? Okay. And then just wanna recognize that it is, Black History Month, and, all the contributions, to the city and, the state and the country, and those who have fought for freedom and their rights. So thank you, everyone.
Ian?
I don't have anything, thanks.
Okay.
Nothing to report.
All right, administrators report.
I don't have a lot to report, as Angelina just mentioned. Thank you. I have a meet and greet tomorrow. You can come out and talk to me a little bit. It's going to be at the library, and it's hosted by the Franklin Historical Society and the library. They put together a little mixer. I know a bunch of people were out and were able to, it starts at 6 p.m. I know that a lot of people were out able to see Chief doing this a couple of months ago, so just a great opportunity to meet face to face. I'll have some of my staff there, get to know them as well, and ask us your questions. We've been really busy with getting Main Street accreditation, which I'll leave that to Susan to kind of talk about more, but that's been something that's been taking a lot of effort over here, working through contract negotiations with our PD, which has been a really great experience. I think that we're on the right path, and hopefully by next month we have a contract that we can bring to you. And then lastly, just the codification project that we've been working on with AmeriLegal is still progressing. Of course, like anything, you know, there always seems to be more than initially identified in the scope of work, but Peter, Chris Dusen, and myself have been meeting pretty regularly with AmeriLegal. We have been getting a kind of a game plan together on how to tackle this, and the goal, of course, will be at the end, we will have codified ordinances that will be up to date and hopefully eliminate a lot of the ambiguity that we see sometimes with changing in state laws or a plethora of other factors. So it was time that Franklin did that. I appreciate council putting forward that as a priority and funding this initial sort of pick through our ordinances, and we'll have more to report as that progresses.
All right, Stuart. So first of all, before you go, I didn't mention earlier, I was gonna say when we did the site plan, but a special thank you to you and the planning commission
Yes.
for taking the time to do a special meeting to expedite the Franklin's permitting process so that we could get it, so that they can move forward. So kudos to you guys, and thank you very much for making that happen. I'm sure they greatly appreciate it, as do we.
So, and thank you for that. I appreciate it, and I'll share those sentiments with planning. Just along those lines, in case members of the community are wondering why we held a special public hearing for them and say not another opportunity, is it mostly what it came down to from a decision-making standpoint from us is that one of our goals in planning is to improve the Main Street and working with Main Street to improve our community. And along those lines of those goals, we felt like it was within our purview to be able to sacrifice our time, as well as I appreciate the time the village office put into this to be able to do that. So I know that there might be some questions why we did it. But the reason really is we're trying to meet those goals that we set a year ago apart. We talked to council about, and that's one of the means of which we're executing it. Delaying it didn't help our community in that way. So thank you. For those that are watching this, and in light of the fact that I might scare you off if you do this, but please come to planning if you're interested in applying for planning. We're not that scary. At least I don't think I am, but it's a fun opportunity to really contribute to the community. Several of our trustees here have been on planning over the years, two directly, and I think, Pam, I think you came from planning before this is, yeah. So it's a great opportunity. We have quite a few members in the community that have been on planning in the past and have spoken highly of it. Please consider applying, and if you don't make it onto planning, there, as we said before, there are other opportunities within the village to serve. But we'd love to have as many applicants as possible. So as as mentioned previously, we've had 2 public hearings since we met last. One of them was on the open burn ordinance, which I believe is still legal right now. So.
Yep.
And then the other one was the one that we have talked about already, the site plan, which you already approved. As well as thank you, by the way, for village administrator and attorney for meeting with the extant lawyers with regards to some of the concerns about the updated cellular ordinance. So they had a 3-hour plus meeting or something, some significant amount of time discussing what we currently had in plan for our cellular ordinance. And the feedback was brought back to us in our last meeting to discuss how we can update it, improve it, and be in line with the state of Michigan. Everything that we wanted isn't always all in there, but everything that we at least need to have is in there, and then we're still discussing that. So we'll continue to discuss that this month as well. Those are the main topics. Our schedule otherwise is kind of light because with the new committee that was created for public access right away. I don't know.
Infrastructure Committee.
Infrastructure Committee, yes. They've taken back over the pathways discussion. So we're willing to help and support with those discussions as needed. But that's where we are with planning. Yes.
I'm sorry. What's the date of the next planning meeting?
It is not this Wednesday, but the following.
The 19th?
Yes. Yeah, 19th.
Sorry.
19th. Yeah.
So now that we've established the infrastructure committee and we have a planning commission that's really all about land use in the village, I'm curious about how you see the planning commission working with the infrastructure committee. Do you anticipate that? Are you moving work that you guys did to a different group?
So
how do you see
this
that
is still new.
unfolding?
Yeah, this is still new for me as far as the infrastructure committee. I think that with Trustee Sally, we need to talk and discuss how we need to integrate with them and collaborate. It's not quite clear to me exactly how we're going to mesh,
Okay.
But it is something that we do need to define.
Yeah, it's on my radar, no particular issue or anything, but it strikes me that your purposes are overlapping. So I'm curious about where that might happen or might have
Well,
happened.
the infrastructure committee was created through council, so I'm
Yeah,
curious
I
from you what the use case is. So that would be more of a question I'd return.
Right, so just to comment to that, I'm not on the infrastructure committee, by the way. But what I will say is that the point of the infrastructure committee was to have a focus and to kind of take these one-off subcommittees that all dealt with infrastructure type things and combine them into a single committee where we can start to drive progress outside of just a monthly meeting cadence.
Yeah.
And so my recommendation would be, and it goes back to my point, which is we need a workshop because our committees off of council should be motivated by how we're setting priorities as a council. And so it would be an opportunity for us to help to say, here is a priority or what we think should be a priority of the infrastructure committee. And then if I were on the infrastructure committee, I would say, here are the things that we tackle to the extent that we need additional resources that the planning commission brings the specialty to. We loop them in or however they want to structure it, but that's how I view it.
I meant to comment on that when you said it, so we'll come back to that. Let's finish up with Stuart if you have anything else.
No, I had nothing else. Any questions though did you ask, I answered your question?
You did.
Okay.
No, it was because you kept talking about the meeting and anybody can come, but you didn't say when it was. And
Oh,
I don't know if
sorry.
that-
No. All right. Yeah.
Are there, for everyone listening, are there any requirements to be on planning? Was it 18 years old and a resident of Franklin?
Yep, a resident for 2 years, correct?
Okay. That's it.
Sorry.
We,
You're good.
we have an eclectic group. So, I mean, we're not, we're villagers. We're neighbors.
Yeah.
There's not really much as far as qualifications go, other than like a sense of civic duty. Like, that's really what it comes down to, is like, do you care about your neighborhood? Do you care about your neighbors? And do you want to represent them and the decisions you make? It's really, it's not, and you know, listen to your neighbors and talk to them, being willing to put yourself out there. It's really not let me put it this way, like, I'm a former Boy Scout, Eagle Scout. One of the things that they teach in scouting is your responsibility to your community. Obviously, it's stuck. And that's what I want to teach my children, my son. That's what I want to teach my nieces and nephew. That's what I want to teach my family members, is that responsibility to community matters. And we're not paid to do what we do. We care about the people we're around, and we show that by serving them. That's really what we want, someone that's willing to do that.
Excellent. Thanks.
Thank you.
One quick comment. So you need to be a qualified elector to be on the planning, and I just want to give,
Yeah, I don't think there's how long you have to live here.
Yeah, because I was on ZBA before I lived here.
Yeah, you don't, no, that's only to be on council.
Just planning, okay.
and I just want to give props and thanks to the planning commission. When they prepare their proposed ordinances, they really leave no stone unturned, even as telecommunications. I've seen other municipalities just kind of gloss over and say, we'll comply with state law and put something together. They got a tough planning commission. They are reluctant to release control. They want to make sure that everything is thorough. There's a lot of back and forth. Probably over thorough in their analysis. So they're doing a
love
fine
them.
job.
Yeah, you don't.
And
yeah.
just to
Don't have to convince
clarify,
any one of the three of us about that.
Yeah, you guys take.
Yeah.
just to clarify, so is the requirements for planning the same as ZBA, or are there unique requirements around planning, just for the
I'll
audience?
take a quick look, but
Yeah.
you have to be
They're the
qualified.
same.
Okay. Yeah, I'll take a quick look, but I think they're the same. You just have to be a qualified elector.
Okay, perfect, thank you.
And then also too, when I joined ZBA Mag, I was able to go to a training. If someone joins one of those boards, would we provide them training if they request?
Ooh, I think we'd have to be careful with a blanket statement that we would provide training, because there's all different kinds of
Yeah.
trainings. I could make training opportunities available and let someone know, but like, for example, if someone wanted to participate in the citizen planner course, I think it would be really a great course, but it's very expensive. I mean, not very expensive, there's a cost associated with it, it's an 8-week course, so, I mean, I would be
More
very careful about that.
More like the $95 one, that's like 4 hours, you know, if they wanted to just get like a quick, like, these are what zoning laws are, and these are what planning.
We could look, I wouldn't necessarily even know what those trainings are. It really is up to individual members on these boards to become educated about the spots that they're serving. I can definitely reach out to my network and make a list of available trainings, and I think that it's reasonable that if they're, you know, under $100, right around $100, that the village helps support that, but that's not something that we've budgeted for or prepared for. I just would be careful with like a blanket statement. For example, I don't think it would be wise for us to pay for citizen planner for everyone on
No,
plan.
no, of course not. I was just thinking like a quick 101.
MML does,
Basically, what
go
I
ahead.
do is for planning and ZBA, we are in the Michigan planners. So
Yep.
they offer classes, and when
Yep.
I see them, I let them know.
Yep.
Yeah, that's
We
fine.
distribute like the map classes, yeah.
ML has free guides as well.
Yeah, that's what I meant by like, we provide educational resources if they thought they wanted more, background.
We
of
can
how we-
absolutely put a list together of those. What I do wanna avoid would be, you know, running full like education courses, but I think that is absolutely fair to, and we have a list compiled to, you know, you're a new member, here are some great trainings like we did with council.
Yeah. You guys did such a good job, so.
Anyone else? All right. Also, I would be remiss if I didn't also thank Dana and Meg for also making yourselves available for the special meeting. I don't think Susan and Peter go, but I know you guys were definitely there. Susan, Main Street report. Main Street Franklin report.
So we've been very busy doing the accreditation process. So last week we met with John Bry and George Vanetis from Main Street, Oakland County. They met with the board for a couple of hours. We reviewed our work plan, transformation strategy, talked about different grants available, all kinds of things. It was a great, great session. Just so you guys know, Franklin is one of 13 select level communities in Oakland County. There are 28 Oakland County communities that are part of the Main Street program. So we are in the top tier, and we will continue to remain there because we will be accredited again. So, shout out to my very diverse board. It's probably the most diverse board that we've seen. Megan and I have talked about this before. Consists of business owners, representatives from Franklin Baseball, the Franklin Community Church. They're part of it too, so I'm very, very happy with them.
All the different organizations, that's helpful.
Yep. And speaking about baseball, I'm going to be working with the Franklin Historical Society and with the Franklin Baseball. We're going to be putting together new banners for downtown.
Yeah, registration is open for the.
It is
the
open.
Franklin Baseball League, so.
Yeah, I think it's
everybody-
through the end of the month into March.
Yep.
Yeah, okay. So yeah, so we're working on that. You're going to see new banners out there, and that's going to be paid for by the Historical Society, so I want to thank them for that too. So
Wonderful.
we've been working a lot closer with them, so.
Thanks to them.
Yep. And I know that there's a lot of changes that are going on downtown. We are very aware of it. I talk a lot to potential business owners that are wanting to come in. So we're trying to get the word out there. Please come in here. The board's willing to work with them too, anything we can to get new businesses going.
Great.
It'll help once we have, the Franklin Oyster Bar going too. That'll be a great thing. So, any questions?
I have a question. When we were talking with Stuart, David mentioned a lot, the importance of the alignment between the work of the Planning Commission and the goals of the council. I'd invite you and Main Street as well, economic development, to participate in those discussions, because it seems like the kinds of projects you're probably looking at will require council support and resources.
Yeah, and I will go to those.
Yeah, so it would be really important to.
And I go to the HDC when definitely when it's something downtown, so.
Yeah.
Okay,
Thank you.
all right, thanks guys.
Thank you.
So I want to circle back, David, I'm assuming you're thinking an evening
Yeah.
workshop for
Yeah, I was thinking.
schedules?
So what we used to do, or I guess last, 2 years ago, is that we just held it right before the council meeting, so we transitioned from the workshop
Oh,
in.
that's a good idea.
I like that.
Yeah, that way we're just keeping it.
I'll go ahead and circulate some dates and times, and we'll see if we can get that scheduled.
Okay. All right, new business. So we have two different budgetary amendments. We have them separated out. The first is a public safety budget amendment to address changes in the public safety budget throughout the course of the last few months, and then as well as a general administration budget. So let's start with the public safety amendment.
I'll go ahead and introduce it. Since both of these would have come out of my office in particular, I can probably answer most of your questions on them. So we saw these budget amendments come together in front of council back in November. And at that point, there were a lot of questions about the specifics of the budget amendments. We decided to put a pin in it. And for conversation's sake, I've split these out into two different budget amendments. The first one you'll see is pertaining specifically to public safety. Predominantly what you're seeing here is something that the village has been talking about since the last budget season, which was taking 4 part-time positions and instead having 2 full-time positions open. So it's this merge of these 4 part-times into this full-time position. A bulk of what you're seeing as far as the police salaries that are being requested and the holiday pay is a result of those positions coming over and making us have 12 full-time positions over at the PD. Now, this was a discussion that happened a lot during council, happened during budget season. It was something that had a lot of consensus behind it and had a lot of support, but needed the technicality of actually amending the budget to reflect these changes. So that's what you're seeing here today. There is some training that increased over there, but the majority of it is the combining of those positions. You're also going to see furniture and equipment for $55,000. Those are for the generators. So if we remember, we had generators before we had the furnaces. So there's some fees that were incurred there. There was a buffer that was kind of built in some different areas, and I sat with Chief and we looked, and there were some areas that we could, cut back and get a little lean, and so that our actual ask on this budget amendment was less. So the PD budget was looked at very comprehensively and got us to the figures that you'll see in front of you here, which are the requests to go ahead and have our current budget reflect our current spending.
So, the one thing that is not about approving this, but still kind of tied into the conversation that you were just having, is that, based off of the study that we just, not study, audit, assessment, whatever, the audited financial report, one of the things that they talked about as something that we have to be mindful of is the pension fund balance. And that was for calendar year 2023, 2024, that didn't contemplate the addition of 2 full-time officers. I would imagine that the full-time officers contribute to the pension, whereas the 4 part-time would not have. So we're taking on additional liabilities there. Something that we're not gonna resolve here, but something please be mindful of and have these communications within the finance committee. It's something that we just need to be mindful of on a go-forward basis, that we are going to see an impact, and that's why I was asking whether or not there was a simplified calculation.
But from a global standpoint, Chief, we had to, lost 2, supplemented them with 4, and now replacing with 2, or we're not adding 2 new officers to the mix. We had lost 2, and then when you couldn't find good replacements, that it evolved into the 4 part-time, and now we're back to 2 full-time, or are we adding 2 officers where we never had before?
So a lot of this came about before I took over, so I'm not 100% sure of the conversations. We had 4 part-time people, and I thought our staffing was at 11, and we removed the 4-time part people and had 1 full-time, but I could be mistaken on that. That was what I thought.
So, to your point, David Goldberg, before the part-time positions, there were unfilled full-time positions that became part-time positions. And they had remained that way for a while. And then the part-time positions were existing. And then back in April-ish, April, May, we get this memo that comes over that says, for a plethora of reasons, part-time positions really aren't serving the PD the way that it should be. But based on where, it's my understanding, of course, this predates me, but based on where that conversation happened and where budget season happened was a discrepancy. So they moved through with the budget that they had been planning on, knowing that they would have to make the amendment. But to your point, these used to be existing positions that became part-time positions that are now going back to full-time positions.
All right, sorry, David, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I mean, that just kind of concludes it, which again, we did approve for moving part-time to full-time, and so again, for the reasons that were previously identified.
That's a really good point.
Fully support this, but just something we want to be mindful of for the 2024, 2025.
Absolutely.
Anyone else have questions or discussions? All right, anybody want to make a motion to approve the proposed budget amendment of 2/10/2025 for the police fund?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, opposed? Chief, as always, thank you to your men and,
Thank
you and your men and women. We appreciate you. All right, next is, and more of an administrative budget amendment. This covers everything else in our village budget outside of the police fund. So Meg, again, if you want to give us some background.
Absolutely. So what you have here, it would be a budget amendment request for expenses that pertain outside of the police department. They would date back from any time from July 1 until now, until current. They include things such as my salary and the retirement contributions and benefits that you're paying me, some staff salary increases. There was approved repairs and maintenance that were made to the building and this would have been at the end of August. That's what you're gonna see in this $4,000 there, under buildings and grounds. So the letters, the red letters, will give you some more information about what each expense pertains to, but this would have been the adjustments that need to be made in order to get our current budget reflecting reflecting expenses which have incurred in the last 6 months.
For letter D.
Yep.
Village budgeted for $40,000 part-time position, but ended up hiring a social media contractor for $16,000 instead. Split 50-50. Could I just get more context behind that one?
Yep. So originally, there was a part-time, this is, of course, my understanding, I wouldn't have been here during this time. Originally, it was, a part-time position was budgeted for about $40,000. And that was, it's my understanding that during budget conversations, that position was supposed to be helping with social medias and in communication. Social media contractor is then hired, paid for partially through Main Street because they serve Main Street. Is that correct, Susan? And then partially through, that's what the 50-50 split is, half of the Village Fund and the Main Street Fund to support that social media person. So because that position has remained unfilled for the last 6 months, there is a certain portion of dollars that have been unspent. And like we saw in the PD budget, this cushion then was subtracted from the amount that's requested to make the budget amendment whole.
Does the Main Street Fund come from the general fund?
Main Street has its own fund. They receive a distribution each year from the village, but they have their own fund, their own bank account, their own financial controls.
So when we approved the $4,000 in this bills list from the general fund, does that mean there was also another $4,000 that we paid her from?
It's half and half.
8,000.
3,000 and 2,000.
No, it's this.
It's 2,000 a month, so it's 1,000 for Main Street and 1,000 for the village.
Then why was it in the general fund under the bills list?
No, it's
All checks are cut from the general fund.
Okay.
Then they're allocated.
And then they're,
They're allocated within the limits into their correct budget areas. Wastewater, Main Street, all checks are cut from the general fund.
okay. Okay, so that answers the question why the HRC study was
Yep.
from the general fund?
yes.
Okay.
Okay, yes.
Okay, now we know. Okay, so that clarifies that.
I make a motion to approve the budget amendment.
Well, second.
So I have, can we talk about it now?
Yeah, further
Okay.
discussion?
Yep.
So I have, very big pause, about the adjustment to the clerk's wages. Watching the council meeting from last June, the council approved the budget contingent upon further salary discussions and capital outlay discussions. Neither of those were had. And, it was apparent that those were just never brought back to council by the former administrator. And this wage adjustment was done without council approval to a position that is council appointed. And it wasn't done within budget or authorization, so it was an abuse of power and exceeded the budget. And just referring to the training I just took on Saturday, budgeting is the single most important tool that this policymaking body has. And considering the financial outlook we have and that we haven't had great oversight of the budget, and that the clerk's position was given a raise in July, and then again in August, and then again in September, it really raises questions as to the former administrator, reasoning behind it, looking at the memo. There is no reliance on any documentation or performance. And then again, it wasn't, it's very high adjustment, 22%, that wasn't given across the board. And it doesn't reflect the council's intent, nor was it disclosed to council, or did it go through any sort of process. And Meg and her investigative efforts, she found it, as she's done with a lot of missing documentation and gaps in our former administration and management. And so I do propose, because it is a total disservice to the clerk that this salary was relied upon, to make the salary adjustment into a type of bonus where through this fiscal year, she is given what she was told she would, but that it returned to that raise that the council approved last July.
So I want to clarify one thing. So what Angelina was saying is that previously Pam had asked a question about capital outlays when we were going through the budget, and I had asked a question around combining the village, the assistant village administrator and the Main Street duties, so that 50% of the salary, basically time and a half. One person was doing duties and a half, and we had discussed separating that out so that we would again have somebody fully dedicated to the Main Street and somebody fully dedicated to the assistant administrator. And it wasn't something that we were able to resolve at the time that we were having that conversation. And so what we had said was, okay, like for the purposes of us approving the budget, we will approve it, but Roger, we need to resolve and separate out these positions. Please come back to us. It never came back to us. And so that specifically was what we were hoping to achieve. Now, what I do have a lot of concern with in approving this is my frustration with Roger as the previous administrator. And I believe that the taxpayers need to understand kind of what occurred, which was I was approached as on personnel about consideration of giving a raise, and this was months ago, early fall. I don't remember specifically when I was first brought to this. And at the time I said, I'm not opposed to giving a raise to the village staff, but I want to see it contingent upon performance metrics. But because Roger wasn't tracking any performance metrics or setting goals for how to judge performance, that we need to come with the performance goals and then we can do a reflection of that. So it was tabled for the time. It never came to personnel to have that communication. Then following that conversation, I had a conversation with the then president, Bill Lamont, at the Scarecrow Building event, and he asked me again about the raises. That conversation occurred on October 26th, but he had approved the raises in August 26th. And what makes me concerned about that is our duties as a policymaking body is to approve a budget. And at the time, we approved a budget that included the salaries. And so when Roger issued the raises, he did it without the knowledge of the council. I at least was not aware of it at the time. Based off of Bill approaching me on October 26th, I don't believe that he was aware of it at the time. But regardless, it required the approval of council for us to exceed what we had approved in the allocation of the budget. And now we're in a position where we can't make an informed decision or a decision that doesn't cause a negative impact to somebody. And that is the ultimate frustration for me, where we can't make an educated decision without having to revert the salary of somebody's life that they are dependent on that. I think that, again, it was process, it was an overstep. He did not have the authority to take the action that he did. He had no reason to not bring it to council. At the point that he had issued memos, those were never sent to council, which is further concerning to me. But I just want to reflect the fact that I do take issue with how this has been handled, the lack of visibility to the council that sits here, and would ask that if we have future expenses that we have specifically allocated and that we will exceed specifically to the degree that we are here, that it come back to council to make that decision, because if I am going to have to pay taxpayer dollars, I want to be able to make that in a non-biased, as impartial manner as possible, which is, I have the facts before me, and I can do it without having to negatively impact someone.
Pam, you gonna say something?
Yeah, I think one of our trustees has made a request that might require an amended motion. You
Well, we
said.
have a motion on the floor.
Yes, I
So
understand that. I'm just
before we do any
before I
amendments-
speak, I'm just acknowledging that.
Okay,
All
but,
right,
well, yeah.
so I want to just comment on this. I'm not going to assume that there was anything nefarious going on here. I just know that people have different views of reality. And I'll leave it at that. What I am concerned about the same things that David, Solly mentioned and Angelina mentioned. That's what happened. I think, I'm not willing to support renegotiating or resetting an agreement that was made by the administrator. I'm not willing to override that at this point. At least my vote will not support that. My question is, going to perceptions, is it possible that our past administrator, kind of looking at you, Peter, and you, Meg, assumed that he did have authority to do what he did? You know, we have our charter and our practices allow the administrator a certain amount of wiggle room on salaries. And honestly, it could be as simple and straightforward as Plant Moran, and we did approve that expenditure for that compensation study. I believe we did do that.
I don't know that we did.
And I've never
Well-
seen a compensation study. It was not reflected in the memo.
Well, we haven't seen it.
Yeah, I'm just saying, I don't, like, we don't do budgets based off of line items, so that wasn't in there, and then
Yeah.
it was never brought.
I
that
mean,
we were
there's lots of
commissioning it.
problems with this.
Yeah,
Not arguing about that at all. But I wonder if, given the authority we've allowed that person, and some language in the charter about a budget authority, that it was as straightforward as, yep, Plant Moran gave us the study, that's the midpoint, I'm gonna do that. And
So-
reset. And that comment is worth nothing, because we still have to approve a budget amendment.
Yeah, and I think that, I mean, it's important to note that, like, I am uncovering this at the exact same time that you would be. So anything that I can speak to, Roger's intent is just that it would just be my interpretation of it. I can say that, he, as the administrator, when he was the administrator, or myself, we have the ability to approve raises for employees that we oversee. However, the clerk is an appointed position. There's been a lot of discussion about that. Of course, the clerk used to be elected. There was a charter amendment in 2020 that takes place that makes it an appointed position. I go back and watch the meeting where Dana was officially appointed, and her appointment was approved by council, but no salary is set, no salary is discussed. So I don't know how you could make the call that, yes, she's appointed, and the fact that council needs to ratify her appointment, but she's not appointed in the sense that he would have the oversight to give a unilateral raise without any recommendation of council. I can't,
A fair point.
I can't really reconcile that. However, I can say that in the past, as we had seen him treat this position with Dana, we hadn't seen him discussing salaries. So is it possible that he had a misunderstanding? I mean, I don't know. That seems, I can't really speak to any of
Did he
that.
come to council for the clerk's raise? He has previously come to council, because council gave the clerk a raise.
So,
Just 2
yeah,
months before.
real quick though, I just want to say that based off of how, again, how I look at, and I could be wrong, this is a conversation that Roger and I had, is that I think about it very similar, and again, maybe this is an oversimplification, but essentially, the village administrator and the staff are, and this is regardless of who reports to who, the village administrator is essentially the executive function of our local municipal government. We are the legislative body. So just as that, we create our allocation of budget. And then the executive has to operate within that allocation of budget. To the extent that they exceed it, they have to come to us for the authority to do so, so that we can reallocate. Now we're forced to revisit this conversation 3-4 months after the fact. And so that's where I'm saying, I don't see it as something where we have to figure out who reports to who. Something we can clarify in the future, and I think that makes total sense for us to do so and probably clean things up. But the material fact here is that he exceeded his authority when he went over that budget without the approval of council, because that's how the separation of duties functions.
I would also suggest that there are some valid points made here, but that I'm reluctant to relitigate the displeasure that some had with our previous administrator. I don't think anything he did was done maliciously or nefariously. And I do know that we had a lot of trouble as a personnel committee just committing to time. The 3 members of the personnel committee had a difficult time scheduling meetings. So you don't agree, but I was the one who was being asked to try to coordinate meetings, and I had a tough time.
But you, so if we're going to talk about the personnel committee, it was you that contacted me about this conversation. And what I said is, if we move it to the personnel committee, I will not support it. My understanding is that you equally talked to Mark, who was the other third of our personnel committee, who equally said that he would not support it. And so that's why it didn't go to the personnel committee. Regardless of whether or not scheduling was ever a thing, he exceeded his authority. He didn't reach out to me to say, let's push this through. If you had communications with Roger, that was between you and Roger. And shame on him, because he should have gone through the proper channels.
As I recall, that was the intent. And whether you supported it or not, we couldn't get
It's not
the 3 of
whether
us together.
It's not whether I supported it.
Well, you
It's-
said you didn't, so
No.
I don't remember the specifics.
What I am saying-
Apparently, you have done a deep dive on this.
Because I'm extremely frustrated
Yeah.
at the fact that
I know.
Roger exceeded his authority and put us in a position where we are discovering that we have exceeded what we were paying somebody by 22%. We were not allowed to make that educated decision. And we ultimately are responsible to the taxpayers for how much we go over budget. And then when we go to them and we say, we need a millage increase, why? Because somebody decided to exceed the authority that they're given. That is my frustration.
Can I further that?
Okay, go ahead.
No, you go.
So trustee Hansen asked the question of whether the administrator had authority. So the ordinance 248.06 gives the village administrator responsibility over the village's administrator shall be responsible to the village council for the efficient and effective administration of their affairs, including exercise of management supervision over all non-elective officers and departments of the village. Okay. Language could be better. I don't have the charter language when it was amended to where village council appoints the clerk, right? So non-elective officers would be the trustees, right? Or, I'm sorry,
Elected.
elected officers, right? So anyone that's non-elective officer, he or she would have authority and responsibility. We're getting into uncharted waters, whether, past protocol, past precedent. And I do want to comment that my experience is you don't know you're going over budget until you go over budget, then you come to amend the budget. Because it's out of the general fund, and things could have been done differently and been brought up to speed. I don't think there was anything malicious or nefarious in his actions. We're here dealing with it today, though, but I wanted to answer your question.
Thank you for that. As we look for opportunities to do better, we can tighten that up. The reality is our clerks, even our elected clerk, was an employee. In effect, she got a pension, she got vacation, she got, and it became that lack of definition became a problem. It didn't even occur to me to think about the fact that we appointed our current clerk, because I look at her as an employee. So that would be an area to get clear about.
Absolutely. I mean, I think that what we can see here is right now, as it's interpreted in the current charter and the current ordinance, that Dana is an appointed position. The clerk's position is appointed. And moving forward, raises should be approved by council, as their appointment to that spot would be. Now, if council wanted to have a further discussion about amending an ordinance to not have that be, I think that could be a relatively, manageable task at hand. I think the other thing that we're having a discussion about right now is a budget conversation. And so I think that it's important to sort of frame this under your new administration. So when I do any sort of project that will be exceeding the budget in a very obvious way, I plan to take a budget amendment to you at the same time. You are ratifying this study. We are going to support this study. Right behind that is a resolution, because the study's going to cost $5,000 and it wasn't budgeted, and we're approving that at that time. That does a lot of things for us. I think it helps me keep better track of where we're at in the budget. It also helps us save time with Plant Moran instead of doing a full forensic, audit here, trying to find where these budget amendment needs to go. And it allows us to make better informed budget decisions. And so moving forward from this council, you can expect, when we have these large unexpected expenditures, that we'll be having a conversation about them. And if the budget amendment doesn't come immediately with the action, then it would be there to follow. I think that you can also expect that until we were to make some changes to either the ordinance or the charter, that I would consider and interpret Dana as an appointed position. And as such, any permanent changes to her salary would come through council there. I think that we're at the point right now where there's a larger budget conversation, and that is valid and something that we can continue to navigate as we move into our next budget meeting. I think that the points brought up here tonight about policy and transparency and the way that it moved through are important, but what we have here now is a situation where funds have already been expended. And keep in mind, Dana is not the only one on this budget amendment. My salary is on there as well, and as are the furnace and other things. So we're at a point right now where we can look back and say that there is definitely, I think without question, a better way to do this. And I think that, the buck stops here, that moving forward, we'll be handling these large budget amendments and the way that we're treating the appointed position differently than we have been in the past. But we are confronted tonight with a budget amendment of funds, in a large part of which have already been expended. There's no doubt that we need to have a budget conversation that includes things such as the Main Street Economic Development Rule and these other roles in the office in general as a whole. It needs a full staffing conversation, and we'll be working with the People Committee to start that conversation and then bring it to all of council, because it's relevant to the Finance Committee just as it is to everyone. But tonight in front of us is, I think all the points, I appreciate everybody's feedback on that. I'm glad that we've talked about it. Unfortunately, we are in this situation right now, and in front of you tonight with this budget amendment is what we would need to make our current budget whole.
One last item. It does say that the administrator shall recommend to council concerning the appointment, suspension, removal, and compensation of all employees of the village.
Okay.
So he should have.
Recommend.
and-
Recommended.
Recommended, okay.
And so I appreciate what Mike said. I have no doubt, I am unequivocally certain you would never do this. So I know for a fact that this would be nowhere in your vicinity of performance doing this. Just want to make clear to the public, this is not a normal merit increase, right? This raise was 24%. And this was done 3 weeks before Matt came on board. And it was not disclosed. And he knew how to get a raise for himself, and he went through the council. And to me, and a lot of people here are trying to put themselves in the frame of mind of Roger, which we can't do. What we can do is say that he knew how to get his raise because he went to council for his raise, and he knew that he was bound by the charter. And the charter says that he must recommend a council compensation. So those two facts known to him clearly show that he exceeded his authority. And so I think that the wrongdoing is acknowledged, but then when we here come and then have to approve of the wrongdoing with taxpayer dollars, when we're trying to cut 2, 3, 4, 5% from budgets, is like really hard to justify. And when I speak to residents and they say, you know, the taxes are too high and the taxes are too high, and I want to see them go through the budget with a fine tooth comb, like this is what we're talking about, like these overages that, you know, were not contemplated by council, and council didn't have the chance to listen to a recommendation and think about it and say, okay, if we're doing this year, what do we have to cut out? And next year we're gonna have to, you know, tighten up our belts because of this new pension. Like, that is what we're here for. That is what we were elected to do. Be fiscally responsible to our taxpayers, to our constituents. And like, to echo what, you know, Stuart said, like, we are public servants. We serve the public. And to me, like,
All right, so
I won't
Angelina,
vote
I think
You
you
know-
made your point.
We have to stop relitigating. It is a brand-new day. Let's move past the past. You are very hostile towards the previous administrator. He's gone.
I'm not hostile towards
Well,
that.
you
I'm
are.
hostile
Let's
towards
move on.
the
Let's move on.
abuse of power.
It was not such an abuse of power.
We wouldn't be here today
Yes,
amending
we
the
would be
budget.
here today. We always have budget amendments.
If discussion's done, there is a motion on the table.
There is a motion, we've had discussion, I'm ready.
I'm gonna call
for
the,
a
I'm gonna
vote.
call the vote. Dana, let's do a roll call vote in favor of the motion to adopt the budget amendment for, I guess we'll call it our administration budget amendment.
Trustee Ferris,
Yes.
President Goldberg,
Yes.
Trustee Hansen,
Yes.
Trustee Solly,
Yes.
Trustee Salter,
Yes.
Trustee Salako,
No.
All right, motion carries. Couple things. To our clerk, this is nothing personal. You're an amazing clerk. We love what you do. This is something that we are sort of wrestling with our predecessor, and we will, in the course of the next few months, figure out how to address this. But this is nothing personal. It has nothing to do with what you do for us on a daily basis and how much we appreciate you and everybody in the staff.
Here, here.
Here, here, I support that.
So we will address this, Angelina. We have a new year that we work out in the course of the next couple months, and I think this is definitely part of that, gonna be part of that discussion. Do we have anything else? All right, I'm gonna go ahead and adjourn the meeting.